Hello everyone, I'm Jeff Hampton with the Hampton Law Firm. Welcome to our YouTube channel and welcome to our video series today speaking about how do you know if an encounter that takes place, was it an accidental killing or was it manslaughter? And this is a question I actually get frequently that bring up the issue, how do you know if it was an accidental death? Why do some people get charged with manslaughter and some people do not? Now, if you wait around till the end of our video, I'll also give you a free ebook, What to Do If You Have Been Charged with a Crime in Texas. And if you like what you hear today, I encourage you to look at some of our other videos on our video series on our YouTube channel and subscribe if you find the content to be helpful to you. Okay, let's jump right into this. Now, listen, being responsible for the death of another person is a terrible thing, but when it's an accident, it's even worse. I mean, it's easier to point the finger and blame someone when they meant to do it, if it was premeditated or it was something that you can clearly see that they should be held responsible for. But I'll give you a case in point. A 22-year-old Texas woman had a gun she thought was unloaded. She pointed it and didn't realize that it was loaded, and they were joking around, pointed it at her friend, and accidentally shot him in the head. In fact, it was her boyfriend. She was devastated by it, went into a complete mental breakdown. But she was being charged with manslaughter as a result of that. After that incident, the district attorney's office chose to charge her with manslaughter. But should she be charged with manslaughter? Is that something that should have happened in this incident? You see, accidental killings do occur, but are those accidental killings, is that an actual crime? So let's identify what that is. So accidentally killing someone isn't always something that's worth charging someone with manslaughter, and it doesn't always meet the definition under Texas law. So there is a very big difference between an accident and a manslaughter killing. So Texas law says an accidental killing is defined as a death produced by a lawful act. Here's what's key. A lawful act performed under the reasonable belief that no harm would come to the victim. The lawful act is what distinguishes an accidental killing from an involuntary manslaughter, as the latter is defined as when a death is the result of either a lawful act that was performed in an unlawful way or whether it was an unlawful act. I mean, obviously, if you're doing something illegal or unlawful, that changes the scenario. So Texas Penal Code, okay, now let's talk about Texas law. Texas Penal Code identifies manslaughter as recklessly causing the death of another person. An act is considered reckless if the perpetrator is aware of the risk that can arise from their conduct, or that a person could die as a result, but chooses to disregard the awareness of those facts. So they're conscious of the risk. They realize that there's a risk involved, but they think, they just disregard that risk and think there's no chance that it's going to happen, okay? In order to be charged with manslaughter in Texas, it's not required that the intent, the knowledge, or any evidence of premeditation must be shown. There's no requirement of that to be proven. If that could be shown, you'd be talking about a murder, right? It'd be a totally different situation. Only that the individual acted recklessly, okay? Recklessly in the situation. Another important note about manslaughter is that if the state does not differentiate, the state of Texas does not differentiate between voluntary manslaughter and involuntary manslaughter like many states do. Texas does provide other designation for manslaughter, such as vehicular manslaughter or intoxication manslaughter, and each of those has its own respective penalties. So, of course, you know what intoxication manslaughter is. Someone that's driving while intoxicated and runs into someone and causes the death of another. That can be an example of one way that someone can be charged with manslaughter. They didn't mean to do it. They weren't intending to do it, but they were reckless in their actions. But as far as vehicular manslaughter is concerned, there's no specific state statute that defines the crime, but the other statutes are brought in along with the concept of manslaughter to make that charge. So what are the penalties? Manslaughter in Texas is a second-degree felony, and a second-degree felony has a punishment range of a minimum of 2 years all the way up to 20 years in prison and a maximum of a $10,000 fine. So what are some possible defenses? Well, you still got to prove causation. If there's a chance that that individual's actions were not the cause of that individual's death, that could be a concern. The other would be whether or not we start talking about whether the act was lawful or not, whether or not there was an actual risk that was disregarded by the individual involved. Every case is a little unique, but quite clearly what you do is break down the facts, apply them to the law, and here's what's key. We've had cases similar to this that because it's a felony charge, every felony in Texas must be indicted by a grand jury. Sometimes the police gather information and it's presented in a way that's very negative because, of course, very negative to the person being charged because a life has been lost. And so there's a lot of a sense of obligation that something needs to be done by the police department. But sometimes a packet of information can be presented to a grand jury. A grand jury could potentially do one of three things on the case. They could keep the charge as a manslaughter. They could lower it to a lesser charge, say a misdemeanor, less culpable charge, or you could be no-billed. The case could be no-billed, which means thrown out by the grand jury altogether for a determination that there was not sufficient evidence. Okay? So as you can see, it's very important that if you're facing or a loved one is facing something like this, it's important to get the advice and good counsel of an attorney. So if you have any questions about your situation, don't hesitate to contact the Hampton Law Firm at 817-877-5200. Thanks again for joining us today, and if you'll click the link below, I'll also give you a free ebook, What to Do If You Have Been Charged with a Crime in Texas. All right, thanks again. I look forward to seeing you on our next video series.